Welcome back to some more Pogchamps. My name is Itai. Today we're looking at the quarterfinals game between QTcinderella and Connoreats. Connoreats began with the white pieces and he ended up going for an opening that I really like. Now his choice of how he started it was a little bit weird. I usually don't go for this move. I first go ahead and play f3 and then only then play bishop c4. But overall, it's such a small difference that usually your opponent will not be able to punish you for it. But regardless, white manages to castle super fast. Black does this structure with the pawns, which, maybe makes the structure pretty strong, but the problem is, look at all these pieces undeveloped. So make sure that your number one priority in the opening is to control the center and develop your pieces. Here we see d3 just trying to get the bishop out there. Obviously not there, but out somewhere on this diagonal. h3 kicking the bishop back, completely fine. Bishop moves back. Make sure in this position you don't play g4. So I like the move, just developing your piece. The problem with g4 is that you're starting, although you're kicking the bishop back, if you're not going to be able to trap it, there's no point in doing this. The bishop can go back, and then you have a much more weak and open king. So that's why g4 would not, typically be a good move. Here, we see the knight hopping over here to g5. Notice that this pawn is indeed defended by the knight, so a blunder would be taking the pawn here. And we see a different side of castling. And when that happens, typically, you're going to want to start pushing your pawns on whichever side your opponent's king is on, because you don't have a king that you're going to be weakening when you're doing that. So you want to be, way more aggressive with your pawns and in general with your pieces if you're attacking on an opposite side. So actually, in the end, Connoreats does take here, so there was that blunder. The bishop moves here, so QTcinderella does have some extra material, but it's nowhere near game over. She actually ends up winning another pawn here. And now we see the bishop sacrificing himself to the king. We see check, and although black has a lot of extra material, this is quite deadly. In fact, the king moves there, you move here, the queen moves, to this spot, just cutting off more of the king's reach, and now there's actually a checkmate that happens. So even though you're down in material, look at how black's pieces, look at how they're placed. Because of how long it took QTcinderella to develop, look at this, because she didn't have, the ability to develop these pieces, in the end, even with the extra material, it doesn't mean a whole lot when they're not doing anything. So, in the first game, Connoreats gets the first win. We're moving on to game 2. QTcinderella has the white pieces. We see a very strange opening. First off, e3 it's by itself is just super strange, but then f4, I don't know how much I like this. I mean, honestly, I don't really like this. But the important thing, regardless of what pawn you choose to push, support it with some minor pieces. That's just a common theme within any opening. So for example, here, you probably want to go maybe knight to c3 or bishop to d2, because when you go knight to d2, you're cutting off the bishop. You can try to fianchetto it, but the point is you're harming your own development. So developing is a big thing that QTcinderella maybe needs to work on a little bit more. You see that Connoreats blunders a piece in the start of the game, and now we get into this position where there's a trade that happens, in fact, more trades with the rooks. And because of this this battery on this diagonal, the queen manages to come and swing in fact, delivering a beautiful checkmate, and the checkmate that typically you wouldn't really be able to deliver, because typically you don't have an e6 pawn guarding the square. A lot of times when you do this, the king has a way out, either to f7 or even to f8. But here, because of this pawn and because of this rook, this actually ends up being mate. So two very quick mates in two very quick games. And now we're moving on to the third game. So we have game 3. This time Connoreats has the white pieces. He goes for the exact same opening as he did last time. Now what you'll notice is that the knight can take, but then white can also take here. And it seems to be completely fine. You're also attacking this square. So this seems to be fine. But rather than, once QTcinderella takes, we see white castling, which gives a chance for this pawn to be defended, so I don't think that was the best choice of move. Now, once again, we see once the knight moves back, that QTcinderella is underdeveloped. She has one piece out on move 5. You should definitely at this point have more pieces. I mean, white has already managed to castle, so you definitely want to focus on developing if that seems to be something that you tend to fail at. Okay, we see both bishops getting enabled. We see a trade of bishops, and now the knight coming to a very active square, but notice that this is not an outpost because obviously in the future the move c6 would kick the knight back. So if the move c5 was already played, this would be, an incredible square for the knight. But because c6 is possible, this isn't the best square. It isn't like a perfect square, but it is still relatively ideal. We see here a very interesting, chance for black to do something. Black can take the knight, or black can move the knight back. QTcinderella decides to take here, and now white definitely should take. You can counterattack for a move, but after that you definitely need to take, because obviously this was the whole trade. But rather than taking, white sacrificed the knights here, which is just a horrible mistake. In fact, this knight can now come and eat the knight, so saving a piece and also capturing a free piece. So that would have been the best move, but instead we don't see that. In the end, white still manages to win the knight. So in this position, it's really unclear who's going to win, but actually white ends up running out of time on this move. So if there was more time, I think that both players had a chance to win. Just a little bit of material is not enough to decide who's going to win that game. But once again, we see both rooks out of the game, and this bishop hasn't even moved yet. So QTcinderella, I doubt she's going to watch this video, but in general, players, once you start playing chess, you really need to focus in the opening stage to develop your pieces. That's just my biggest tip from this match. And that's how the game ends. So QTcinderella does move on in a very nail-biting three-game match. Make sure you guys subscribe if you want more of these Pogchamps videos coming at you every single day, and peace out.